etc. With me now to discuss the events of the day, but also not ignoring certainly some of the more annoying social issues that have taken place, is Toby Young, social commentator and General Secretary of the Free Speech Union. Very firstly, Toby, your initial thoughts there, a very moving and emotional setting there as the Queen did a loop around the outside of Buckingham Palace, just the entrance there, and then went into spontaneous applause. I got a bit teary-eyed. I imagine you were emotional as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the really remarkable things in the past few days is, I think, an older, gentler, patriotic Britain has emerged. A lot of us had thought that Britain had disappeared in much the same way that Putin thought that the West didn't any longer have the confidence to stand up for its values and defend a country like Ukraine in the teeth of the Russian invasion. Turns out, a lot of these traditional values are there just beneath the surface. We don't hear much about them because the people who shout the loudest.
Toby, that's a fantastic point, Toby. It's a fantastic point, and I want to expand on that a little bit, because as we see images of the outside of Buckingham Palace there, crowds now starting to filter away. But right across the United Kingdom, we've seen people gathering to pay their respects and to also commend our new king, King Charles III. And all too often in this country, Toby, we're hearing a very, very vocal, shouty and frankly annoying minority of people either waving a certain type of flag potentially or saying that we all need to be woke these days. But actually, the silent majority does believe in good British traditional values, don't they?
I think that's right, yes. And I've been really pleasantly surprised by how enthusiastic people have been about our new king. I think, like a lot of people, I was slightly concerned about the future of the monarchy after the Queen passed on, thinking that Charles might not be able to command the same public affection, the same universal respect that the Queen commanded. But actually, it turns out that people are really welcoming and enthusiastic about King Charles III. And, any anxieties I had about the future of the monarchy in his hands, I think, were misplaced.
Do you think this will put some people back in their place, as it were, people who think that we do need to constantly be, quotes unquote, progressive, because in some ways I would argue that's a little bit regressive in the way that we seem to be going about it now? This is an opportunity, and hopefully an opportunity anyway, that I think will give people confidence to say, actually, hang on a minute, I am a royalist, I do believe in Britain and a certain version of Britain, and it doesn't need to be constantly changing.
Yeah, I hope it does give people who believe in traditional British values, who feel patriotic, who care about the monarchy, who want to put Britain first. I hope it does make them feel a little bit more self-confident and a little bit less afraid to speak up and articulate what they believe and not have to look over their shoulders for fear that they'll be called, regressive. But one thing we need to bear in mind too, Patrick, is that, there is still a small minority who don't like the monarchy, who would prefer Britain to be a republic. And even though, their timing, if they're articulating those sentiments now, as some of them have been in the form of protests, holding up signs, etc., even though their timing's terrible and most of us have no sympathy with their views, nonetheless, we should defend their right to free speech. That is one of the things that makes this country a great country. It's one of the things the Queen stood for. And it's quite wrong, however offensive and annoying we might find those people and what they're saying. Nonetheless, they have a right to set out what they believe, just as everyone else does. And that should be defended. And it's quite wrong of the police to have been arresting and in some cases charging these protesters. We need to stand up for their right to free speech precisely because we believe in traditional British values.
Well, Toby, I must admit I've gone full circle on this, and yes, I am emotional. I'm emotional at the moment because of what we've just witnessed there, our dear Queen making her final journey through those gates of Buckingham Palace, and the idea for me that anyone would want to use this particular moment in time to shout obscenities, no matter what people think, for example, of Prince Andrew, and a lot of those criticisms are valid in my view, the idea that anyone would shout at anyone as they walk just yards behind their mother's coffin. I went, Toby, from, I'll just say this, I don't mind, thinking, I wouldn't mind if these people were almost taken out on site, which is wrong, by the way, I was just emotionally charged, to being like, OK, well, they have got a right to say it. I am now in the position of, I actually further defend their right to say it, not because just on the free speech grounds, Toby, but on the fact that I think they're actually actively damaging their cause and showing their true nasty side. And free speech principles aside, that's another reason to let them crack on, because they're not going to be the winners here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that's actually a really powerful argument, Patrick, for defending people's right to free speech, including those who you profoundly disagree with. If we might really disapprove of a point of view, but if we suppress it, if we punish people for expressing it, then we're deprived of the opportunity of making our counter-arguments, of making the case for the other side. And often, if you suppress these unorthodox and unfashionable points of view, it gives them a kind of underground glamour, and they don't deserve that. People should be entitled to set out their point of view, however toxic and offensive it is, in the public square, so people like you and I can engage them in robust debate, challenge those views, and hopefully persuade most people to reject them.